Qatar, the country built on dead men to host a football party. Let's talk about Qatar, a country smaller than Connecticut, with fewer citizens than Houston, that somehow decided it was going to host the biggest sporting event on the planet, and won. Here's the first fun fact. Only about 10% of the people living in Qatar are actually Qatari. The other 90%, migrant workers, mostly from India, Nepal, Bangladesh, the Philippines, building stadiums, driving taxis, raising rich people's children, basically running the entire country while not technically being allowed to be part of it. Cute system, right? It's called Kafala. Your employer sponsors your visa. Your employer holds your passport. Your employer decides if you're even allowed to change jobs, or leave the country, or, in some cases, breathe without permission. Human rights groups have a simpler word for it: modern slavery. Qatar prefers labor sponsorship framework. Same thing, better font. So how'd the stadiums get built? Migrant workers, in the desert, in summer heat that regularly hits 50 degrees Celsius. That's 122 Fahrenheit, for anyone doing the math from inside an air-conditioned country. The Guardian did an investigation and found that in the decade after Qatar won the World Cup bid, over 6,500 migrant workers from just 5 South Asian countries died. 6,500. Qatar's official government count of deaths directly linked to World Cup construction? 3. Just 3. The math isn't mathing, but sure. 3. Workers were housed in labor camps, 8 to a room, sometimes. No air conditioning in some cases, in a country where the outside air can straight up cook an egg on the sidewalk. Some workers reported not being paid for months. Some reported their passports simply vanishing the day they landed. Welcome to Qatar. Papers, please. Oh wait, we already have them. Now let's talk about the money. Because there is money, an obscene amount of it. Qatar sits on one of the largest natural gas reserves on Earth. Liquefied natural gas exports alone bring in over $60 billion a year. For a country of 3 million people. Do the math. It's embarrassing how good that math is. Qatar's sovereign wealth fund manages around $450 billion. That's not government revenue. That's the piggy bank. They own chunks of Harrods, the Shard in London, Paris Saint-Germain, the football club, Volkswagen, Barclays. Basically, if it's expensive and famous, there's a decent chance Qatar owns a piece of it. Meanwhile, back at the labor camps, anyway. For the World Cup itself, Qatar spent an estimated $220 billion. For comparison, Russia spent about $11 billion on the World Cup before it. Brazil spent $15. Qatar didn't break the budget, Qatar broke the calculator. They built 7 brand new stadiums from scratch. One of them, Stadium 974, was built entirely out of shipping containers, specifically so it could be dismantled after the tournament. Genuinely clever, genuinely bizarre. A stadium with an expiration date, built by workers whose expiration dates weren't exactly optional either. They also built an entire new city, Lusail, from literal sand. A city for 200,000 people, built basically from scratch in about a decade, complete with a stadium that hosted the World Cup final. Try building a city from nothing in your own country in 10 years. You will be arguing about zoning permits until the heat death of the universe. Alcohol, by the way, technically restricted, banned in public for most of the population. Then, right before the tournament, Qatar announced beer would be allowed near stadiums. Then, 2 days before kickoff, they banned it again. FIFA's own beer sponsor found out via press release, like the rest of us. Somewhere, a Budweiser executive aged 20 years in one afternoon. Same-sex relationships, illegal in Qatar, can carry serious criminal penalties. Qatar's response to concerns about LGBTQ fans attending? Everyone is welcome, just don't show public affection, don't fly a rainbow flag, and also this thing you are still, technically, could go to prison for. Very welcoming, very we love you, please don't get arrested. And yet, despite all of this, the heat, the deaths, the vanishing passports, the beer flip-flop, over 1.4 million fans showed up. The most watched World Cup final in history. Argentina won. Messi finally got his trophy. Confetti everywhere. Beautiful moment. Built on a stadium assembled by men who weren't allowed to leave the country that hired them. Qatar, for its part, insists things have improved. They abolished some Kafala restrictions in 2020, introduced a minimum wage, around $275 a month. Set up a fund to compensate workers for unpaid wages. Human rights organizations say enforcement remains, let's go with inconsistent, which is the diplomatic way of saying mostly on paper. So here's Qatar in one sentence. A nation with more money per citizen than almost anywhere on Earth, built into a global spectacle by people it barely acknowledges exist, hosting the one event guaranteed to make the entire planet watch. And the planet watched. We just mostly watched the football. If you learned something or got mildly furious, that's honestly the correct response. See you in the next one.